More with Joe Kissel on Taking Control of Sequoia. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by 1Password Extended Access Management. It is security for the way we work today. Find out more at onepassword.com/MacVoices.
I think it would be probably a more interesting use of our time to talk about Apple Intelligence.
I'm anxious to hear what your thoughts are because, as we record this, we're just a few days from Apple's September event, which most likely we will hear something more about Apple Intelligence. So, but from what you've been able to ascertain from the betas and all, thumbs up, thumbs down, wait and see.
It's for me, based on what I have seen so far, it's a mixed bag. Now, keeping in mind that all of this is still very beta. I mean, it's very, very beta. So what I have been able to see and try so far may not reflect what the public ever sees. Nevertheless, there are some parts that work surprisingly well and some parts that I'm like, okay. So one of the things Apple will be doing, again, not in the first release of Sequoia, is to kind of treat Siri and Apple Intelligence as a unit. Now, they really are separate things, but Siri relies in part on Apple Intelligence, and they both now have the same, they will share a pane in system settings. So Apple is trying to associate those things more. So one of the uses of Apple Intelligence will be to make Siri understand you better. And I cannot complain about that. I can say that in my testing so far, Apple has done a noticeable job. Let's just say that. Like I can say that Siri understands me better than previously. When I speak impromptu like this, there are and ums and likes and I don't know. Let's go back and revise. Wait, I didn't mean to say, like a lot of times where I start a sentence and then I don't quite finish it, or I don't think my thought through all the way to the end, and I just kind of make it up as I go along. And that's okay. Like we're talking together as humans and we can see each other and we figure that kind of stuff out. But for a computer, if you don't say exactly what you mean the first time, it's liable to get confused. And so one of the things Apple has done is to make Siri more forgiving of not quite perfect speech. So that's nice. And you will be able to do things like Siri will be able to keep track of some pieces of data and use them later in a conversation. For example, I tried this. I asked, and I hesitate to say the word because all these devices are going to say, "Yes, Joe, can I help you?" But I asked this digital assistant what my sister's birthday is. Now, of course, I know what my sister's birthday is, but I mentioned her name and said, "What is her birthday?" And Siri replied. So then I said, "Remind me then to call her." So Siri put a to-do item in reminders for that date, and the reminder said, call your sister. So Siri knew when then was and who her was because of the context I had just said, look up this person's birthday. So things like that. Sorry, and even as I speak, messages is dinging at me. I should probably, I could have taken measures to prevent that, but now I have. Okay. So it provides for a more natural interaction. You don't have to say, "Siri, what's the weather like in this location?" And then, "Siri, book me a flight to this location or whatever. Like you can just sort of keep going with the same thing. So that's nice. The rest of Apple Intelligence, it's not one thing. It's sort of a little feature here, a little feature there, a little set of features here. Well, of course, the group of features that is most interesting to me is the writing tools. And I don't know how Apple pulled this off. It's quite amazing. These writing tools are available in almost any app, even apps that haven't been updated in 10 years, that don't use all the modern APIs and all the fancy stuff. They work almost anywhere. It's really cool. So you can have the Apple Intelligence features do things like proofread your writing, look for not only typos, that's easy, but also grammatical errors and things where you might just want to phrase things differently. You can have the writing tools suggest text that might be more businesslike or more friendly, things of that sort. And I've tried these. I'm like, well, holy cow. So I randomly picked a paragraph out of the beginning of Oliver Twist. It's a fairly long paragraph. And I said, okay, Apple Intelligence, let's try out all your tools in this paragraph. Show me what you got. And it summarized it. It turned it into a bullet list. It rewrote it to be more concise, more friendly, more businesslike. It even created a table representing all of the main facts in this paragraph. And I'm like, this is going to really upset a lot of English teachers because it's pretty good. Now, of course, I think, well, how will this help me? So I tried it out on some paragraphs from books that I was working on, and it did catch some errors, which is awesome. Unfortunately, it was not quite smart enough. For example, when we're writing about icons and things on your menu bar and this little button you have to click or whatever, we actually stick a picture of that thing right in the line of the text. So it would be like, click the new Siri icon and there's the icon and do this. We do this all the time. We have tons and tons of inline images in our book. Well, if you select a paragraph or however much text that has those inline images and you're like, okay, proofread this, it deletes all those images because it doesn't see them as words, it sees them as extra spaces. So you have to go back and now correct each one of those things individually. And like, no, this was not that. I meant that to be there. That really is supposed to be there. And so for things like that, it turns out to be more annoying than helpful. But still, like it's useful. There are ways that could improve our stuff. Now later on, there is going to be this generative component to it. And ChatGPT integration will be an optional component of that, but you'll actually be able to ask Siri or ask your whatever device to write you a paragraph or a story or a whatever that meets these criteria. And that's where I start getting a little unhappy because that literally is my job. And every time I have tried any sort of artificial intelligence, generative AI, asking it to create the sorts of things that I create, I have been very, very disappointed in the results. They've just not been accurate. They've not been true or correct. And so I'm not really a big believer in the using AI to just write stuff for you. And on that theme, one of the other features is something called Smart Replies. Whether you are using Apple Mail or Messages, when somebody sends something to you and you open a reply, you start, typing reply, a little thing will pop up saying, would you like to say this? And 0% of the time do I want to say whatever one of those suggestions is. You can't turn this off. At least not yet. Not in the betas I've seen so far. You can't say, leave the rest of Apple Intelligence features turned on, but don't pester me with the smart replies, because what it means is every single time you reply to anything, you have to manually, with your mouse, click that little X to make the smart reply go away. And I just never want to see them. It's annoying. So I could kind of go on and talk about a bunch of additional Apple Intelligence features, but they're all kind of like that. They're a mixture of, well, this is really cool, and I can see a little bit of benefit to this, but this part of it is irritating.
Joe,
and I hope it gets better.
Are you describing a 1.0 version of a product that needs for us to have experience with it, and those who develop and design it have experience with how we're going to use it?
There's an element of that for sure. There's also an element of, all right, there's as we're recording this, there was a recent controversy because NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, put out a statement that basically I'm reading more into this than it actually said, but basically it was interpreted as saying, yeah, you want to use AI to write your novel in November, you want to write your 50,000 words of fiction, but you want to use AI, well, that's fine. We don't really have a stance on that one way or the other. And I'm like, no, you have to have a stance. And the stance has to be that you shouldn't do that, because that's kind of the point. That if you write your novel by typing in a request to an AI that takes you 10 seconds, write me 50,000 words in which the following 3 things happen, and you say, well, there, I'm done. I wrote my novel. I'm a novelist now. Where's my publishing contract? Like, everything in the world is wrong with that. And people who put years and years of their life into coming up with ideas and writing them from scratch, and whose ideas were then kind of sucked into these engines without their consent, and who make a living doing this, like, you can't do that. You just, it's not right. It's not right. And so I have no doubt that generative AI can produce interesting text. I really don't want it to. I want my fiction, as well as my nonfiction, to be written by people. And I want to be able to trust it. And I know how much AI just makes stuff up, and how little the developers of these technologies care about things like copyright. So I'm not on board with that. I don't want generative AI to be writing anything. We certainly don't use it for that purpose, and never will, in Take Control books. And I don't have a good feeling about it. So,
okay, look, that's fair. I feel obligated to say I do use an AI component for writing the summaries to the MacVoices shows that get published, but I don't think I've ever used a complete one. They give me a place to start. You know, they might pull out some things out of the discussion that I'd sort of forgotten about, because I felt like the focus was over here when it was really maybe a little more over here. So I find it useful, but I don't find it a replacement that I can just cut and paste and say, okay, I don't have to do that. So,
well, that's good. I think a very large number of people will not go that extra step and say, I'm going to vet this information that the AI spit out. They will just cut and paste it. Now, one of the Safari's new features that I did not bother mentioning before was an AI-based summary of a page that you're looking at. So I tried out this summary feature on a blog post that I had written about myself a number of months ago. And I read the summary and I'm like, nope, that is not true. That is not what I said. And if someone didn't read any further but the summary, they would get a completely misleading and inaccurate picture of what I said. And that really bugged me. It wasn't true. So even in something like that, where you're only trusting AI to summarize a web page or an email message or a message from the Messages app, I have seen many examples where those summaries are just bad. Now, I do have to say, Apple lets you give one of these summaries or a rewriting, the proofreading, all those kinds of things, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if you give it a thumbs down, you can explain what you didn't like about that thing, and that information is sent off to Apple to help improve this stuff in the future. That's good, and I wish every generative AI provider did that sort of thing. Even so, it disturbs me that a lot of people have already shown that they will just trust this stuff without actually reading, without thinking it through. Whatever the summary says must be the case, and it just isn't.
Yeah, I share that. I share that concern, but I also think that's going to be a habit that gets unlearned very quickly, because all it's going to do is take one or two times for you to get really burned badly, and then you're going to say, "I can't use this. I shouldn't use this. I won't use this." For that purpose.
Yeah, we've seen several examples already of lawyers getting in trouble because they submitted legal briefs that an AI wrote for them, and these legal documents cite cases that don't in fact exist. And so some lawyers have gotten themselves and their clients in a huge amount of trouble for submitting documentation to the courts that AI just hallucinated into existence. My observation about humans over these many decades that I have been observing them, they're not like on my home planet. They routinely, reliably will do the easiest thing. And I get it. I would love to expend less effort and get the same result too. I'd love to be able to earn money with less work and spend more time with my kids. But any tool that you use, whether it's a power tool that you got to make sawing or drilling faster, or whether it's a software tool, needs to be used thoughtfully. And if you are not willing to use it thoughtfully and carefully, you should expect things to go wrong. If it's a power tool, you might lose a finger. If it's a legal document, you might lose the ability to practice law or whatever. So I wish that humans would tamp down that urge to just do the easy thing and actually think things through.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by 1Password Extended Access Management. There are two kinds of computer users: the ones that follow the rules, stay between the lines, and listen when warned. Then there are the others, the ones who see the shortest distance between 2 points as a straight line, the ones who do their own thing no matter how many times they're told to stay off the grass. It's the second group that gives you the most trouble. They are the unmanaged devices, shadow IT apps, and non-employee identities, like contractors, who don't always follow the rules and create the security problems. 1Password Extended Access Management helps prevent the security issues that the second group can cause. It brings all those unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. Get everyone back between the lines and off the grass. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't. It's security for the way we work today, and it's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra, and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Find out everything you need to know about 1Password Extended Access Management at onepassword.com/MacVoices. That's onepassword.com/MacVoices as your first step toward better security for your organization. Thanks to 1Password Extended Access Management for supporting MacVoices. This is a little bit outside the scope of the book, but I'm going to go here anyway. With what we know about Apple Intelligence, about the approach that they're taking, do you feel good about that as opposed to the approaches that some of the other large language models and AI developers have taken up to this point? And Joe, what I'm thinking about is the on-device versus send everything to the cloud approach.
Yeah, and we haven't touched on that yet, which is cool. So a lot of, not all of the features, but a lot of the features happen on your device, which means that Apple isn't sucking all of your questions and all of the answers into some big, cloud model and potentially causing, privacy concerns. So that's good. There is a boundary to that too. Apple does say that at a certain point, things do have to be sent to the cloud, but we're going to use this private cloud compute thing, which still keeps it safe from the big bad world. So I think in terms of privacy specifically, Apple is doing a better job than anyone else I have seen. So that's good. Apart from the privacy story, though, the best I can kind of say about Apple versus the other generative AI players seems to be less bad. I hesitate to say better, but I will say less bad. I would like to see more human intelligence involved. but that's me.
Okay, that's fair. I think there are a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions and a lot of different comfort levels at this point in time. Where we will be in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, we don't know, because we don't know how these things are going to evolve from an accuracy standpoint and an availability standpoint.
I have one of my sons just started high school yesterday as we're recording this, and he was telling me this. His English teacher has already given him literally the next 2 years of assignments. She's laid out everything all the essays, all the like everything for the next 2 years. I'm just like, no, man. And this being 2024 and technology being what it is, I'm sure that he and his classmates are going to be sorely tempted to use AI as much as they can get away with for, writing essays and doing all these very tedious kinds of tasks. So I'm imagining the teacher assigns an essay, write me something about this topic, and they ask their favorite generative AI to write them that paper. And they kind of glance over it and they say, okay, that's good. And then they submit it. Now, the teacher who actually knows the subject matter is going to spot things that the AI hallucinated about. The teacher is going to spot sort of telltale things that suggest it was probably written by an AI. Now, if the student knew enough about the subject matter to check everything that the AI wrote, say, is this really true? Is this really true? Does this really follow from this? Do I really believe this? If they knew enough about that to check the AI's work, then I'd say, okay, fine, you got yourself a little bit of help, but it was what you really wanted to say. The problem is, if you know enough to be able to accurately check an AI's work, you also know enough to write it yourself. And that's the whole worry, is that you won't learn enough to be able to vet what the AI produces. And boy, I can think of so many ways other than what we've already seen demonstrated that this can and will go wrong. But again, we're talking about Sequoia here, right? And we're talking about a future feature of Sequoia that hasn't even shown up in developer betas yet. So all of this has to be bracketed with, we worry about this, we suspect this, we hope this. We'll have to see. It might be a lot better than I'm imagining. It might be a lot less bad than I'm imagining. But I do, have the ability to ascertain the wind direction without the benefit of a meteorologist, if you know what I mean.
I think these are important conversations to have to make people think. I don't want to sway anybody, because at any given moment, my opinions can change. So I don't want to sway anybody. I just would like them to ask the questions you're asking, see the world through your eyes, and especially with your experience level with tech and with writing, and say, is this for me? Or is this something I can make use of? Or is it just a shortcut that feels good and is going to come back and bite you later? So
I'm not really sure I want people to see things through my eyes, because I don't want everybody to be terrified. That's no good.
Well, yeah, but you're forcing us to ask questions, and you're giving you gave a couple examples there of situations that I hadn't exactly thought about in that way. So now I need to go back and pass those questions through my understanding and my use cases, and come to maybe a different conclusion, maybe the same, or maybe it just puts up a yellow light and it's like, I need to wait and see, but I need to be cautious. So
yeah, I mean, we could talk about this, go in all kinds of directions for hours. My kid had to get a scientific calculator for his math class. Scientific calculator. I had one when I was in high school too. So that's great. But he's like, why do we even have to learn math? Because I'm always going to have a calculator or a computer. Like, I will never ever have to compute a square root manually. I will never ever have to compute a sine or a cosine manually. Like, we have tools. So in the real world, since I will have a tool to do that, why should I even learn how to do this at all? And it's a good question. One could argue on both sides of it. I do think that even if we're not facing some sort of Terminator style apocalypse, I do think that there is a utility in humans still having the ability to figure stuff out on their own, despite having tools that can do this for us. But again, I'm only bringing with me the experiences from my home planet, so it is what it is.
Joe, I'm so glad you're visiting from your home planet. Thank you so much for the discussion and for Take Control of Sequoia. But at this point, after we do the conversions from the currency of your home planet to this planet, how much does this cost, and what else do we need to know about acquiring it?
So this book costs $14 US. If you live in, I don't know, Canada, it's going to cost more dollars. If you live in Australia or Hong Kong or other places that use units of currency known as dollars, it'll be a different number. But in United States dollars, it's $14.99. And we have some discounts available for people who had earlier books on macOS and iOS. You can, of course, get this stuff at takecontrolbooks.com. And I have to tell you, back in the olden days, the olden days, the days of gigantic user groups with hundreds, thousands of members, I was once invited to speak at the Berkeley Macintosh user group, one of the really big ones, BMUG, and I was there to talk about Nicest Writer because at that time I worked for the company, and I was talking about how great Nicest Writer was at foreign languages, and somebody says, well, yeah, but does it support Klingon? And I said, oh yeah, sure. And I showed them where Klingon was an option on the language menu because I insisted they put it there. And that kind of brought the house down and made me feel proud. um, so we do respect not only other currencies, but in fact other alien races. So everyone is welcome to buy our books.
Is it available in Klingon?
Hey Siri, translate this book into.
Well played. Well played. Joe, I hope you're back visiting this part of our solar system soon so we can talk about your next book, another book, multiple more books, because it's always a blast. Thank you.
You have no idea. Yes, I will see. Hopefully we'll have something less controversial to talk about next time.
No, I'm not going to go where I was about to go. No, okay. Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right.
And of course, if in case it's not obvious, takecontrolbooks.com is where you go to get this book by Joe, all the other books by Joe, and all the other books by all the great Take Control authors. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.